Have you ever felt that ache inside? The one that whispers, be chosen, be wanted, be loved. We all have. And many of us have chased that whisper for years, molding ourselves bit by bit to fit the mold of someone else's desire, so someone would stay. But what if I told you that chase is one of the slowest ways to disappear? That in making someone the source of your value, you surrender your center. In today's episode, we're going to confront a harsh truth. Sometimes what feels like love is dependency in disguise. And dependency can tear you apart quietly, piece by piece, until you no longer know who you are underneath it all. But there's another way out, a path that leads not to more seeking, but to self-sovereignty. Let's walk it together. Part 1. The silent trade. When you exchange yourself for approval, picture this. You meet someone you care about deeply. You laugh at their jokes, you censor your thoughts, you recalibrate your mood depending on theirs. You start shrinking in places where there should be expansion. You silence small protests inside yourself so things stay smooth. At first, it feels small, a concession, just this once. But over time, you accumulate concessions until your own voice is faint. This is the silent trade. A little bit of your essence for the illusion of being safe, seen, and loved. Imagine you choose not to speak up about something that bothers you because you don't want to rock the boat, or you bury your ambition because it intimidates them. Later, you wake up and feel hollow, wondering where your boundaries went. Dependency is subtle because it often feels like compromise, generosity, or love. But when your worth comes to depend on someone else's acceptance, you've handed them the power to unmake your peace. Seneca writes in Moral Letters that no servitude is more abject than the self-imposed. In other words, being enslaved by your own attachments is more devastating than any external force. The Stoics warned that to need is to be at risk, because what depends on what is outside, you can always be disrupted. Part 2. Stoic wisdom, freedom in what you control. So how do you begin to reclaim your power? The Stoics offer a kind of map. Epictetus taught that there is only one way to true happiness. Cease worrying about things which are beyond your power. He reminds us that the behavior of others, their opinions, their love, their presence, lies outside our control. What is ours is how we respond, how we choose our thoughts, how we protect our inner state. Marcus Aurelius, too. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you live as though someone else determines your value, your peace is a house of cards. When you realize your mind is your domain, you begin to rebuild from the inside out. Philosophically, one of the highest virtues the Stoics and later thinkers praised is autarkia, self-sufficiency. In simpler terms, being less dependent on external things for your internal well-being. The less you rely on others for what only you can give yourself, integrity, strength, clarity, the more capacity you have to truly give to others. Self-sufficiency is not about isolation. It's about cultivating a ground so strong that others can visit your life, not rule it. Part 3. Psychology and the shadow. Who you buried to be seen, turning inward. We find patterns buried beneath the surface. Childhood wounds, unexamined beliefs, shadows we suppressed. Anytime you bent to be chosen, you likely left behind a part of yourself. Dreams, opinions, creativity, even parts of your emotional range. Carl Jung famously said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That means your history is not your destiny. You can reclaim what you gave away, one step at a time. Jung also spoke of individuation, the process of peeling off the masks, integrating your shadow, and becoming whole. True freedom comes when the person inside you, your wants, your fears, your truth, is allowed to breathe again. Erich Fromm, too, warned of escape mechanisms, the ways people flee from freedom by clinging to dependency, to relationships, or to identities handed to them. Because freedom demands responsibility, and many avoid it by giving their power away. So the work here is psychological, noticing where you complied, where you shrank, where you believed someone else's gaze had more value than your own. Naming it, grieving it, and inviting it back into light. Part 4. Steps to reclaim yourself. This is the heart of the episode. How to start walking out of dependency and into sovereignty. These aren't quick hacks, but invitations into a deeper path. Ask, when did I change myself for someone else? Where have I silenced my voice? Note those moments. The details matter. Maybe you soften your tone. Maybe you withhold your opinion. Maybe you let your boundaries fade. Identify those leaks. Spend quiet time alone. Sit with your thoughts without distraction. Let the parts that want attention surface. The world teaches us to fear stillness, but it is in stillness we hear the voice we lost. Use journaling, meditation, nature walks, practices that root you in yourself. Over time, your center grows stronger against the pull of external validation. Begin speaking your truth in small places. Share your opinions. Set gentle boundaries. Say no when it matters. Build rituals that upkeep your inner integrity, speaking kindly to yourself, honoring your commitments to your own growth, not someone else. As you grow stronger, notice how relationships shift. You enter not from need, but from invitation. You love not because you depend, but because you're already full. Those who can't meet you there may drift away, and that's fine. They were never meant to complete you. Part 5. Examples and story moments. A friend of mine, call her Maria, stayed in a relationship for years, thinking that love would save her emptiness. She would change her schedule, small preferences, even jokes, to make sure he didn't recoil. She stopped reading what she loved, stopped going to art shows she cared about. Eventually, she felt like a ghost in her own life. One day she realized she couldn't remember what she wanted. The relationship asked her to sync with someone else's emotional rhythm. She began small acts, going to a bookstore alone, writing short poems she never showed him, waking up just for her morning tea. Months later, she sat with me and said, "I'm realizing love didn't just stop hurting me. Dependence did." This is not rare. It happens in subtle ways. Bending your posture to avoid disapproval, texting back when you'd rather rest, planning your life in footnotes of what someone else might tolerate. Over time, it becomes your default, but default can change. Part 6. Integration. Wisdom from Aristotle and Nietzsche. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you live for someone else's gaze, you never pursue the project of you. Wisdom is birthed when you stand still and look inward. Friedrich Nietzsche warned against becoming what others want. He promoted amor fati, loving your own fate, your own self, your own becoming. The greatest act of freedom is to live your life according to your internal law, not someone else's expectations. You cannot be both shapeshifter and sovereign. The path of sovereignty invites you to settle, not in stagnation, but in consistency with your core. Let me say this plainly. You do not need to be chosen to matter. You do not need someone's approval to be real. You do not need love to ground you, because your ground is within. If your peace depends on another's presence, it is counterfeit. Real peace is sovereign. It is born when you reclaim what you surrendered, when you anchor in silence, when you respond to your own voice. So choose differently. Choose yourself. Pause before shrinking. Speak what's inside. Sit with the ache. Let dependency melt, and from the ashes begin to rise, whole, clear, sovereign. If this message moved you, subscribe and join me in the journey of inner sovereignty. Let's build lives not based on being seen, but built from awareness, built from truth. Because the greatest victory is not to be chosen, it is to choose yourself every day.